Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ogenin, and I'm Jim Quist. Thanks for joining us. Multiple NCAA championships, a head coach fired, an injury-plagued season, and a whole lot more. We know who's going to be playing in the ACC football championship. We've got lots of sports news to talk about, so let's go ahead and jump into some of what's going on the periphery, especially the Olympic sports, Will, because there's a lot of stuff going on there. The final cross-country polls are out, and no surprise, NC State is number one in the women's poll. Why? It's because they won the NCAA championship, and that was at UVA. Congratulations to the Wolfpack. In that final women's top ranking, it's NC State at number one, Notre Dame at number 4, Virginia at 15, Boston College at 26, and Syracuse at 27. Meanwhile, on the men's side, UNC came in at 6, Syracuse at 9, Notre Dame at 14, NC State 17, Wake Forest at 24, and Florida State at number 27. That's not the only thing that's going on in Olympic sports, though. There's more.
But wait, there's more.
More, you say? Yes, there is. The field hockey championship. Boy, what a game. UNC in double overtime takes the championship in penalty shootout, beating Northwestern 2-1. UNC defeated UVA 2-0, and Northwestern defeated Duke 2-1 in the semis. So basically 3 out of the 4 teams there, ACC. It says a lot about how much the ACC dominates the field hockey area.
Yeah, that was a cool story though, with the coach who had just played on the team just last year, right?
Yeah,
won championships as a player and then takes over as coach and immediately wins a national championship. How cool is that?
That is a thrilling thing. It's got to be pretty exciting. Surreal would be the best word to apply there, and I'm sure that she's still sort of waking up in the middle of the night going, did that really happen? Yes, it did, and congratulations. Hey, in the NCAA women's soccer semifinals, got a lot of action going on here. FSU over Texas 5-0. That means they'll meet Pitt next, another ACC power play there. UNC defeated Texas Tech 1-0. They're going to be taking on BYU next. Clemson won on penalty kicks 5-3 after tying Georgia 1-1. They'll advance to meet Penn State. NCAA men's soccer action. UNC is taking on Hofstra. Clemson meets New Hampshire. UVA faces Indiana. Notre Dame takes on Western Michigan. And that's just a little bit of the sports news from the ACC. We've got more. The latest AVCA volleyball rankings are out. Pitt is at number 3, Louisville at number 7, Georgia Tech at 12, Florida State is at 23. I think this is the most teams I've seen in the volleyball rankings for out of the ACC for quite a while. 4. Basically, you can count on 2 or 3. But hey, I'm all for it. Why not? Let's see what else we got here. We've got USCHO ice hockey. Now that doesn't have anything to do with the ACC teams, but we do have 2 teams that are members of the ACC that do play ice hockey independently. So I always like to give them recognition. The men's side of thing, the Boston College men are ranked number 2, and Notre Dame is at number 18. Meanwhile, Boston College women are at number 14. And the latest CAA swim and dive top 25 is out. Virginia on the women's side is number 1. North Carolina State is at 3. Louisville 6. UNC 15. Duke 16. In the RV category, it's Virginia Tech at number 26, and number 30, it's FSU. Let's look at the men's side here real quickly. NC State at number 2, Notre Dame at 10, Louisville 11, Virginia 12, FSU comes in at 17, Virginia Tech at 19, Pitt 21, Georgia Tech 23, and in the receiving votes category, it's at number 28, the Tar Heels. Lots of sports going on. As we've mentioned in the previous episodes, it's crossover time. So we've got all this crossover action going on from fall into winter sports. There's more coming up in the next couple of weeks to as we sort of wrap up what's going on in fall and then head into more of the meat of what's going on winter-wise sports. So, wow. Just, I mean, once I start, it's like it's nonstop.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. That's right. Let's address this Dino Babers thing here. It's really tough to say what the top story is in the ACC this week because, to be quite honest with you, my heart is sort of with all these folks who have been injured. So I kind of feel like that is the top story about all these injuries. This has been an injury-plagued season. And that's worthy of talking about. We'll talk a little bit about that, touch on it. But Dino Babers is out at Syracuse as head coach. He'd been there 8 years, and I'm not surprised. I don't think you're surprised. I don't think really anybody, probably even Coach Babers himself, wasn't surprised at that. I'm probably surprised at the fact that they let him go after that game because Syracuse is actually going to a bowl. Now, I don't know what the strategy was there. I got the impression, I share that with you guys behind the scenes, that maybe Syracuse has got somebody lined up already. I don't know. Kind of felt
I have a hard time believing that at this point, just because seasons aren't over and they still have to go through the interview process. I mean, if so, we're going to find out like about a week from now.
Yeah, about a week. Yeah, after Thanksgiving, and
After these last games are over, like regular season games are over, unless they're going after a coordinator from a championship team. But from what I gathered, just by briefly reading what the AD said today, or they want someone with some experience. So that will, at least in the G5 or the P5 level. So that feels like there's going to be a limited pool. So we'll see. I mean, I don't see Syracuse pulling a current head coach. It's likely going to be a coordinator somewhere. To I don't know. It rules out a lot of people who I think would have been real good candidates for the job.
Yeah, it's so tough, and not to disparage Syracuse in any way, shape, or form here, but let's be realistic here for a second. It's been forever and a day, probably before I was even born, and that's a long time ago, folks, that Syracuse had a powerhouse football program going on. And it certainly hasn't been the focus of, what they're about sports-wise for many decades. However, getting into the ACC meant that they needed to start doing something. And I mean, they've made some moves, they've done some things, and they've come a long way since. Let's put it this way: in the last 20 years, I think they're a better program than they were 20 years ago. But that may not be saying a whole lot.
Yeah, 20 years ago they were letting go of Paul Pasqualoni as their coach.
Yeah.
And this was after things had kind of gone downhill after Donovan McNabb graduated. That was like in my lifetime, that was when Syracuse was at their peak. I mean, they've had some solid seasons, but I couldn't tell you, I don't know off the top of my head where they peaked at rankings wise during the McNabb era, but I don't think they ever touched that, at least on a consistent basis. I know what was it, 2018? They had a 10-win season, which it was similar to the 2017 Miami team that got there on a lot of turnover luck. But as far as all in all, they really haven't been that big of a program for most of my lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, a struggle there, I think, perception wise, that's always difficult to draw talent into a program that they perceive as not really having vested, anything in the football side of things. Well, we'll see. I would really like for them to start showing a little bit more here. And I think this hire is going to tell us everything we need to know. And I'm not dismissing Dino Babers by any stretch of the imagination. I never thought he was a good hire to begin with, but that's me. My perspective was they pulled somebody up that shouldn't have gone that far, and at least not at that point. And he had some good, but overall, I just don't think that he delivered on what people were anticipating. And I didn't see it when the hire came. I was like, okay, it's okay, but I mean, I just felt like you're settling for. All right. So if they go ahead and they do the same thing again, if they hire somebody of a similar nature, and again, I think Dino Babers actually is a good coach. He's hamstrung in some regards where he is. It's difficult as hell to recruit there.
Mm-hmm.
Put him someplace else where he has some recruiting power, and I think he'd do a dynamic job. So that's my impression. I just think it was a bad match to begin with.
So while you're talking, I was looking up the Syracuse's year by year records, looking through their, recent history. And the last time they had that 10-win season in 2018, the last time they had one was 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a team that got up to number 14 in the polls. This team actually, they actually got up to number 12 in 2018, but again, they had some preseason rank in 2019, but they finished 5-7. We're actually up to number 14 last year, but we all remember they got a ton of luck at the beginning of the season, and then it kind of petered out, and they finished with 7-6. But again, going back to Paul Pasqualoni, when he had his run in the late 90s, early 2000s, like that was really the only time that they were consistently having big seasons. I mean, we had what, 1, 2, 3 three 10-win seasons and a lot of 8, 9-win seasons before he left in 2004, and the program's just never recovered.
Yep.
And they've gone to a few bowls here and there, but they just haven't reached the level of the success that they used to. And I think that your point is right on there, Jim. It's not exactly Syracuse, New York is not exactly a football haven. Um, they consistently struggle to recruit there. Yeah, you can get your gym here and there, but we also have to factor in the current state of college football, where NIL can easily entice someone to move along. And Syracuse is one of those schools where you can, if someone has a big season, you can easily try to pull someone out of there. Again, we talked about recruiting. They haven't recruited well. They have one of the lowest. They've been consistently towards the bottom of the league in recruiting rankings.
Yeah.
For a lot of time. I don't know if that's just because the recruiting staff isn't good, or that's just the reality of the situation. It's just really hard to get recruits there. It's getting a Donovan McNabb-esque type player is not as easy now as it was, back then.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of a reality call that, yeah, maybe changing uh, the coach that buys you hope, but I don't think much is going to change. Your expectation should be getting to a bowl. You're not probably not going to win a national championship anytime soon. So being competitive, winning, trying to flirt with 500 in a league, win some of your non-conference games, getting to the 6 win mark to go to a bowl, that should be your expectation. Getting to postseason play.
At the very least, set that as your your floor, right? That's
And anything above that's a bonus.
that's right. I mean, and I know that sounds defeatist, but it's just a reality check. And here's the other thing, is that as an AD and as a school, you need to be able to, again, as you point out, Will, that NIL situation is not easy in smaller markets. And unless you have some high rollers that went to the school and are in business and have a lot of money to throw around, or there are big businesses in and around Syracuse, which there are, but I mean, it's difficult to tap into that kind of money because they don't look at that and go, oh, I'm getting something for that. Uh, you know, it all comes back to that, what have you done for me lately sort of thing. Well, as an advertiser, and I advertise, so I look at it this way: what's the most effective way, to get the most bang for my buck? I want ROI. It's just that simple. So you need to do the same thing with your program. You need to get it in a position, and this is where your AD and your president and members of the board and alumni and everybody comes into this plan to start talking up and getting more publicity. And this thing drives me crazy about Wake Forest. Same damn thing drives me crazy about that. Here's a school that is a quality school. It's a quality sports programs. It's got an awesome coach down there with football. And where do you hear it outside of Winston-Salem? I mean, nobody's talking nationally about Wake Forest. Well, that falls on some people who are supposed to be doing that stuff. Well, Syracuse, same thing, guys. You really got to step your game up. You can't expect somebody as an employee. Let's say that you hired Will and I to dig a ditch. Well, you can't put us out on a street without safety vests and working in dark conditions and no shovel. You got to give us a shovel, man. You got to give us something that we can dig ditches with, right? And if we find that we run into something that's bigger, like a boulder or something, we need a backhoe. Well, you need to be able to step up immediately and get that for your people. And we're talking coaches here. If they need something, get it for them, provide it for them, make it work. So, I can B&M about poor management all day, because I've dealt with too much of it in my lifetime, and I will call it out in a heartbeat.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, you're not taking.
But your point, yeah, and I think that's the thing. A leopard never changes its spots.
No, sadly, no. Yeah, let's talk about injuries just for a moment.
Do we have to?
I really don't. I hate doing this, but I mean,
unfortunately, it's part of the news, right?
It is. We've got multiple players that have all been injured lately. One who is in Louisville still, as far as I know, who was very fortunate. They've got a really good hospital system there that he was taken to, and taken to and had surgery, some very it just sort of it's staggering, Will, to be honest with you, the injuries that athletes incur. I mean, everybody who
It's
played sports knows that you're going to have bumps and bruises and all kinds of stuff, but man, stuff like that never goes through your mind.
yeah, just it's just been a rough stretch for injuries. You're talking about Paris Jones there, still in Louisville at a rehab facility, recovering from his injury suffered over a week ago in that Thursday night Louisville game. And obviously his career's over because he is about to graduate anyways. I'm pretty certain of that. I'm like 99% sure. Remember Emory Williams last week. He got hurt and had to put an air cast on his arm,
Yeah.
and Van Dyke came in and finished the game. And then what happened Saturday with Jordan Travis is just gut wrenching in so many different ways, because it was, it's a game against an FCS opponent and you're already trailing 13 to nothing and trying to get momentum back, and he scrambles and it just, yeah, you take one look at it and like, oof. It's just sad. We've talked about on this podcast how, what he's gone through to get to this point, to being among the best quarterbacks in the league. Um, and now his college career's cut short. Two regular about a game and a half regular season left, plus the conference championship game and potentially the playoffs. Now we'll see if Florida State can still get there, but that's not what we're worrying about right now. Yeah, it's just a really sad and unfortunate uh, injury, and it's like you said, it's part of the game. You see these types of injuries happen all the time in football. It's why it's such a violent, dangerous sport, and why a lot of mothers are not going to let their kids play it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it in my lifetime, especially coaching, how there's been a move um, by parents moving kids out of football and basketball, where there's an inordinate amount of concussions, believe it or not.
Mhm. And taking, inadvertent, elbows to the face and whatnot. That happens.
Yeah.
When you talk about that in basketball, and obviously you step wrong and you injure your ankle or a knee, you can easily do that on the basketball court.
Yeah. Um, for all you players, you parents, and everybody else, it's be safe. Take care of yourself. If your body's talking to you and saying, "Hey, something's not right," don't always try to push through it. I get the mindset of trying to push through stuff. Spit on it, rub a little dirt on it, that kind of nonsense. That's how I was raised, and you know what? Um, it's stupid.
Oh, your bell just got wrong. Get back in there.
That's right. Oh, which way, coach? Who are you again? Yeah. Believe me, I saw somebody get their bell rung in high school, and I've never forgotten that. A guy turned out to be, I think, no, it was he didn't, but his brother turned out to be a doctor, an emergency room doctor, later in life, who I had a lot of dealings with, and man, I talked to him about that numerous times, and it was just amazing how, wow, I'm just amazed sometimes at people are come out of that kind of stuff in good condition. All right. So congratulations to all of the folks who have picked up NCAA championships. That's a quite amazing run there for North Carolina. NC State on cross country. It's just, there's an awful lot of sports in the ACC that we tend to overlook sometimes as fans. We repeatedly will tell you this, that you need to become aware of all of these sports because there's some exciting action going on there, stuff that you will get sucked into, the whole energy, that whole adrenaline buzz that you get from sports. All of these sports will do the same thing for you. Trust me. Getting in there and watching the competitiveness, it'll blow your mind. It's fun to watch. Speaking of fun to watch, I watched I didn't watch all of this game, but the Duke and Stanford women's basketball game, because I have this thing for Duke women's basketball. I don't know why. I'm just, you know, the Duke men, I sort of like, okay, whatever. But I have for years have just been a fan of Duke women's basketball, and they have done pretty well. And boy, did they took Stanford right down to the wire in that game. It was awesome basketball. It was so much fun to watch. And all I can tell you, Stanford, welcome to the ACC. Because next year,
Next year this will be a conference game.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get into football, man. We're talking about a lot of stuff here and filling up a lot of time. People want to hear about football, so let's talk about that. So, bowl eligible people: FSU, Louisville, NC State, Georgia Tech, UNC, Clemson, Boston College, Duke, Miami, hanging by one game still, Virginia Tech and Syracuse. So we'll see whether or not either one of those teams can pull one off. Syracuse goes up against Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, and Virginia in the Commonwealth Cup. That should be a fun game. Right at this moment, I'm not even sure. The other day, I thought I was sure. Now I'm not. So we'll see. ACC football this past week. Pitt over Boston College 24-16.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a good game for Pitt. There's that.
It was actually kind of entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it was close throughout. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, it wasn't the most well-played game, but it was definitely a close game. When I say throughout, it was, what was it like? It was basically a one-score game for most of the way, which when you want to look at a watch football game, you want competitiveness, and that's exactly what you got here. Yeah. 24-16 was the final, as you mentioned. Rodney Hammond, 145 yards rushing in this game for the Panthers. It was including a 66-yarder. That was, Pitt looked pretty good in this game. That's probably one of the best offensive outputs of the season, at least a recent memory. I mean, the offense has been a problem all season long, and they just couldn't get it going here. And Boston College, lost a couple after getting bowl eligible. Not look good in this game either. And Castellano threw a couple picks, didn't run the ball well, and Kai Robichaux had 118 yards for the Eagles. But yeah, good thing Boston College got bowl eligible when they did, because they had a couple rough games afterwards, and certainly this week is not going to be easy either.
Not at all. Louisville with a 38-31 win over Miami. That was an entertaining game as well. I was amazed by the performances on both sides, both in a good way and a bad way.
Yeah, I think Miami impressed me in this game, because after coming off that loss against Florida State, I thought they were just going to be down in the dumps and we're going to basically be in quit mode in this game. But they sure as hell proved me wrong, and Yeah, Van Dyke looked good in this game. 327 through the air. Looked, I may say, probably one of his best games. He's still not 100%. Let's be real. He's not 100%. He's still banged up. But story of this game for me is Mark Fletcher, 126 yards on the ground. He looks like the running back of the future for the Hurricanes, and I think you'll see a lot of him in the next couple of years. I think he's going to be a big part of that offense. But yeah, Louisville just keeps doing it. I mean, Jack Plummer had 3 touchdown passes, 300 yards rushing. They relied on the run to or Isaac Orendo with 93 yards in this game. George Jordan didn't run the ball really well, but again, he's been banged up for a while. He hasn't been himself, but he's been able to, contribute to some. It's just Garendo has been a huge get for this team, and this defense just continues to do just enough to get them to win ball games. And like I said, they're in the ACC championship game by the skin of their teeth because boy, that Hail Mary almost worked, didn't it?
Almost, yes. That was a fun last second play. I will say that Plummer, how he strikes me is that he's thinking too much. He's just processing way too much. He just needs to get out there and play. And I think when he does, he's playing good ball, but I think he thinks too damn much for his own good. So stop thinking, Jack. Just get out there and play, kid. Virginia over Duke. Boy, this is another wild and woolly game. 30-27. I never saw that coming. Never. But I tell you, that was entertaining.
Yeah, congrats to Tony Elliott on his first home ACC win. It took him almost 2 full seasons to do it, but couldn't have come at a better time. And when you look at how this team is, this team has been competitive for most of the season, except for like 2 games, really. And they've been able, and lately the offense has really just clicked. Especially with Calandria in, he started in this game. Musket was out with an injury. 278, 3 touchdown passes, plus another 66 on the ground. He looks like the real deal, which I don't think anybody expected out of this Virginia offense. Malik Washington set records for receptions and yards in team history for a single season. Did not expect that when the season began, but good on him. 8 for 112 and 2 touchdowns in this game. Yeah, huge, a huge get out of the portal. And this is what the plus part of the transfer portal. You get somebody like him to come in and set records, and he's going to end up with some more hardware once the season ends here next week. But yeah, I mean, Duke made a good comeback in this game. They cut it to 3 late, had an opportunity to potentially win on an onside kick, but Virginia covered it and was able to get there. But they started Grayson Loft this game, and he looked all right, threw a couple touchdowns, but did get picked once. Running game did pretty well. They averaged almost 6 yards a carry. But yeah, again, Duke's going to a bowl. Virginia's not. Virginia needed a win just to kind of build up momentum, going into the offseason. And they definitely got one, and, good on them.
I don't really have a lot to say about Notre Dame rolling over Wake Forest. I think we've discussed Wake Forest's shortcomings this season ad nauseum, and a 45-7 blowout by Notre Dame is, I don't think, overly surprising. Anything you want to toss in there?
Wake had 232 yards of offense in this game, allowed 3 more sacks. Basically, the story of Wake season. They can't get much going because their line just doesn't protect.
Yeah. All right, that wraps that up. Clemson over UNC, and this is an upset because UNC was a ranked team. Clemson 31, UNC 20, and that was far more than playing in Death Valley. I can tell you that. I thought Clemson was far more dominant in this game. North Carolina, Now I don't know that we do this. I know I do. I always talk about, and I talked about this last week. I talked about how I think UNC toward the end of the season they just start sputtering, and I see it again here. It's like you just ran out of gas, and I thought Clemson played a good strong game for the most part, but man, it was like watching North Carolina was like, where was the enthusiasm and the energy and the drive that we've gotten used to seeing at the beginning of the season? It just all disappears toward the end of the season. What is the deal, Will?
I wish I had an answer for that. It just like ever since that loss to Virginia, they've really been a roller coaster. And even before that, really, but it just feels like it's kind of been magnified with that Virginia loss. And some of it is, May has been very up and down lately. He's had his good games, but he's also had his bad games. And if it wasn't for Amari and Hampton, this offense would be struggling. I mean, he was a big part of this game. Hampton, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns. Um, yeah, he's really been the big surprise, or one of the big surprises in terms of players breaking out in ACC football this year. Somebody wasn't, I don't even think was on the radar of players, having big years, but he definitely is one. But yeah, Drake made 16 of 36. I don't know how many times he's been under 50% or right around 50% this season in terms of passing. It hasn't just been against, the best competition either. I think I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the line play or the receivers aren't quite the same. I don't know. But yeah, they're 8-3. They're not, a little bit of a disappointing stretch to end the season, but Clemson has kind of rebounded a little bit with a couple big wins, led by the run game. Will Shipley, 126 yards and a touchdown. Phil Maffa, 84. They ran 55 times in this game. Clemson actually ran 89 plays in this game. That feels like it's a lot for them.
That's huge for them.
Yeah. They ran the ball 55 times for 247 yards in this game, and that pretty much explains why they won by 11.
Yeah, I've got a comment in regard to Drake May. It's not a bad comment. I see a lot of chatter on NFL chat sites, chat rooms, whatever, talking about the top two quarterbacks that are most likely to be drafted. May's one of them. The other one was Williams out of USC, and there's sort of pluses and minuses for both of them. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I have this weird feeling that Drake May is not going to go for the draft, that he is going to transfer to some other school unless North Carolina can bring in, people that can surround him and put together some sort of a decent overall offense and defense, that there'll be a show team, but I think if I were in his shoes, I'd hit the transfer portal and go to another school where that's in play. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'd go, hey, Nick, you guys need a quarterback down there in Alabama? Put in one more season, get that national spotlight going, and then you're a sure. I mean, he's a surefire NFL draft now, but I mean, I don't know. There's something about, to me, unless he absolutely has to, something to me about playing at the college level that you want to prove something. You're never going to be able to prove the same thing at the NFL level.
I mean, keep this kid away from the Chicago Bears. That's all I got to say.
Oh, they'll ruin it.
Had to go for it, Jim.
I totally agree with you. I just say I think they ought to stick with Justin Fields, and if they're going to ruin somebody, they probably have already ruined him too. I mean, I think every quarterback they've ever brought in there. Um, I don't even want to talk about the Bears. If they don't fire at least two coaches by the end of the season, um, management and leadership are idiots. And of course I've already come to that conclusion a long time ago.
Duh.
NC State over Virginia Tech. This was not close, people. 35-28. May ended up 7-point difference, but this is not a close game. This was the Pac's offense definitely dominated in this game.
Yeah, it was 35-14 going into the fourth, and it felt like State kind of let off the gas pedal a little bit, and then Tech came back and made this a game. But yeah, you mentioned this was a really good. It was a Brennan Armstrong game, really. I mean, they had 408 total yards. Armstrong had 292 out of that. So, he had a big hand in that. 203 in the ground. He had 4 touchdowns in total. Threw for 2, ran for 2. Probably one of his best games at NC State this season. Yeah, they've a lot of what you see from Virginia Tech that came late. Kyron Jones threw 3 touchdown passes, but yeah, like I said, those 2 of those were garbage time to make it close. It just for the longest time they couldn't get anything going offensively, and that's credit to NC State's defense. I mean, there's a reason State is 8-3, and it's that defense and guys like Peyton Wilson, who's one of the best linebackers in the league, and maybe all of college football, and they have a good secondary too. And I think this is turned this season has really turned around because of that.
Yeah, no, Hokie fans can actually, I think, be encouraged. I think the Hokies have certainly come a long way compared to where they were 2-3 years ago. And they got a long way to go yet, but I think it's building in the right direction. So, it is what it is. I mean, you just got to suck it up for a while until it gets better. FSU with a 58-13 win over Northern Alabama, which, I said this before, and of course, 2020 hindsight and all that crap. Why the hell are you playing an FCS team at this point in the season?
Maybe this is their audition for the SEC or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on to this next game.
Yeah, there's not much, like we already talked about the Jordan Travis injury, and there's really not much else to say about this game.
Really isn't. Georgia Tech over Syracuse 31-22. I don't know if that was the trigger or not that they got rid of Dino Babers. I doubt it. I think he was already on the chopping block.
Yeah. I think you're most likely right. I think the decision had been made, and they were just waiting to get towards the end of the season to officially announce it. And I think I saw today that they gave him the option to finish out the season next week, and he elected not to. But good on Georgia Tech. They got bowl eligible in year 1 under Brent Key. 6-5, coming in 6-5. I don't think I really expected them to get to a bowl this season, but that win over Miami, for example, was one that I did not expect. They've been able to get a couple of impressive wins like that over the season. They've run the ball really well. We talked about Haynes King being kind of a dual threat guy. Jamal Haynes ran well in this game. They had over 200 yards rushing, averaging over 5.5 yards per carry. Defense did its job. Had a couple turnovers. Syracuse kind of went back to that offense they used last week. And not full. They didn't fully go that way because they still threw 16 passes in this game. But Dan Villari, 14 of 14. Great. Now, perfect passing day, but for 59 yards. So it was literally like dump offs because Quinn Allen had 8 catches for 21 yards. So basically, they gave LaQuinn Allen 35 touches in this game, which cool. I'm sure he loved it, and I'm sure he was still sore as hell a couple of days later. But he can put the ball in your best player's hands and hope it works out. And Allen is definitely that. And it worked. And say they made it competitive. But again, congrats to Georgia Tech. Brian Key's done a really good job there in year one. I feel like I feel like it's already worked out, to be honest with you, when you look at where the program was under Jeff Collins and how much different things are with
Yeah.
Key. And they obviously played well for him last season towards the end. And obviously they're going to a bowl in his first full season.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think he's just mindset, everything. And his turning that program around is going to depend on his recruiting, which I understand he's doing a pretty darn good job of doing. So Saturday, December 2nd, is the ACC Football Championship in Charlotte. It's going to be at 8 o'clock on ABC. You don't want to miss that. And speaking of TV has been very good to the ACC this year. I think the addition of the CW has been a big plus in getting exposure. There's been an enormous amount of games on ABC. Of course, the ACC network is there. And we all know after that long drawn out period where we're not on Xfinity, we are. And of course, ESPN picking up a game or two here and there and getting a lot of really prime time action, which is fun to watch.
It would help if I had turned my mic on. But yeah, CW has been a big boon. And we've had a lot of good games on that network this year. Remember, that was the Virginia one over North Carolina was on the CW. Ref Cam's been a big revelation for their coverage this year. Having that, seen some cool things. Just kind of getting an up close look at at what they see. There was a play. I was watching the Virginia game on Saturday, and there was a play where I think it was Duke fumbled and Virginia recovered, and it happened right next to the ref there. And I thought that was kind of cool to see the whole thing develop.
Yeah.
And to be honest, he probably could have jumped on the ball and recovered it if he wanted to too.
One thing I really enjoyed on Saturday was that split screen with the stats going on the Louisville Miami game, I believe it was. That was on ABC. The primary was on ABC, which you normal coverage, and then the split screen was on the ACC network. And I was watching ACC network on that because I love all of that information and that split screen going on there. So
yeah,
good stuff. Hey, games coming up this weekend. We're basically saying sayonara to football. This is the last regular season game for these teams before they get into bowl action, some of them. Kentucky is at Louisville. Pitt is at Duke. Wake Forest at Syracuse. Virginia Tech at Virginia. FSU at Florida. Clemson at South Carolina. Georgia at Georgia Tech. And North Carolina is at NC State. Oh man, this is a nice lineup of games. Who you take with that Kentucky-Louisville game?
Well, I think I got to go Louisville. Otherwise, Jeremy would probably disband me. He would never talk to me again.
Pitt at Duke.
I think I lean Duke in this one. I'm not like super confident in it, but I feel like this game being at home, I feel like they're going to get it.
I'm going Louisville and Duke as well. Wake Forest at Syracuse. Oh boy, which one are you gonna go for here?
I'm going for the other channel. I mean, it's a CW game, so right now Syracuse is favored, so maybe I should take Wake in to win now. I kind of wonder though, maybe this is the opportunity for the coach to audition for the head job, so maybe they'll come out with a different plan. So maybe I'll take cues on this one.
Well,
Go to be bowl eligible too.
yeah, that was what I was going to say. This could be a bowl eligibility game. Well, it is a bowl eligibility game. But we'll see. Virginia Tech at Virginia. The way you're gonna go homey here, aren't you?
I mean, I talked about this last week before this came out, and I said I expect Virginia Tech to be a slight favorite. I think what I last I saw Virginia Tech was a 3-point favorite, which falls in line with what I was thinking. Um, and I think some places have it as it's still about a 3-point game where I'm looking it up as we speak, but I just I gotta go. I gotta be a homer here, right? It just I feel like the way they've been playing lately, I think Tech's had more clunkers than Virginia's had, and I just wonder, what Virginia Tech's going to be like in this game. I remember this is the first Commonwealth Cup for both of these coaches. Obviously, the game was canceled last year because of the tragedy. So one of these guys are going to start off 1-0 against their in-state rival.
Hmm. I'm going with Virginia.
Yeah.
I think their offense has got something going, but it'll be a
It,
tight game. You
yeah,
know,
I think the thing that kind of that concerns me with Tech is we've seen how good Tootin has been, yet he only got 2 carries in that game last week. How do you go away from that?
it makes no sense to me. But hey, I'm not paid the big bucks by the
Yeah.
Commonwealth.
Yeah.
FSU at Florida. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I hope Florida pounds sand up the Gators' rear end.
Yeah, this got a lot tougher because I don't with no Jordan Travis. I mean, yeah, Rademacher looked decent against North Alabama. Again, FCS competition. You can't take much out of that. What do you get like? And I think Florida might be playing a backup too. I believe if I've seen the news, they could be playing a backup quarterback as well. And this game being in the swamp makes it so much more difficult to figure out. But I'm just gonna go Knowles here because I feel like they're gonna if the game plan should be to run. You've got you run Benson, run Tuafili. Yeah, you gotta use those guys a lot, and then just yep, and then use Keon Coleman as a deep threat downfield.
Clemson at South Carolina.
Yeah, I like Clemson here. I feel like their D line's gonna wreak havoc on the South Carolina O line, which is not very good.
I agree there. Georgia at Georgia Tech. Tough.
Yeah, we're yeah. Georgia's a 24-point favorite in this game.
Like I said,
Oof.
tough choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Although how cool would it be for Georgia Tech to pull off the upset?
I,
I mean, it's probably not happening, but still that would be fun.
but it
But
would be.
yeah,
It would
it
be
would be. Yeah.
absolutely the most thrilling game of the season.
Might end up
Okay.
giving Brinky like a long-term extension for that.
Yeah, they should. UNC at NC State. Ooh,
This is probably the toughest, like of all the games, this is probably the toughest. This is like Carolina's a 3-point favorite. This is a very even game. Obviously, Carolina has the advantage offensively, but State has the advantage defensively. And yeah, usually you'd want to take defense, but I don't know if I trust NC State offensively to get something, but I feel like they're going to do just enough defensively to win this game. So I'll take the Wolfpack.
Well, that's kind of where I was going too. Um, I just, I go back to that comment about North Carolina at the end of the season just running out of gas, and NC State seems to be picking up steam. So
I'm looking at ticket prices or whatever for these games for this weekend, and the ESPN's app, they show game. I'm looking at like some of the most expensive ticket prices or whatever, and I see for Clemson, South Carolina is like $158. You could get into Wake Syracuse for $5. I think I'd rather be paid $5 to
rough. All right, quick look at the latest AP men's and women's basketball top 25. Things have already changed after this has been released. Let's start with the men's first. Kansas is at number 1, Purdue number 2, Arizona 3, Marquette 4, UConn 5, Duke at number 9, Miami 10, UNC 14, Virginia 24, receiving votes at number 35, Clemson. What has changed in that already, Will?
Well, just before we recorded, Virginia got its what handed to them by Wisconsin. Final was 65-41. It was a butt whooping. Not good. Not good at all.
Not good.
Just going to leave it at that.
Oh, let's go over to the women here real quickly. South Carolina is at number 1, UCLA at number 2, Colorado at number 3, Stanford at number 4, and Iowa at number 5. Virginia Tech at 9, NC State 10, Florida State at 13, Notre Dame at 17, UNC at 18, and Louisville at 20. There's quite a few. And I will just note it's because when the game was played, Duke was not included in the RV, but I would have put my 2 cents in there to say Duke's women basketball should have been included at the very least in the receiving votes. Dang.
Well, I mean, still, they're a really good team. I mean, who knows what? I mean, the fact that they hung with the number, well, I think where Stanford ranked, I think they were number 6 or something like that, number 4.
6.
They were number 6 going into that. They're in that game, but they moved up to number 4 with as of today. But you hung with a team that was top 5 basically going into the game and took them to overtime. So that shows a lot. But like we keep saying, the ACC is going to be a gauntlet this year, and I have not seen anything from these early results to dispel that.
No, not at all. Again, encourage you, if you've never spent any time watching women's basketball, you should be watching the ACC, because man, they have got it going on. Some great action. And just as a reminder, for those of you who are either watching us on YouTube, listening to us on ACC Nation Radio, or the podcast, the interviews with Debbie Antonelli talking about women's basketball preseason, Dan Bonner preseason for the men. Interesting to go back and listen to those conversations and to see what their thoughts were in regard to where the women's and men's teams in the ACC were headed, and especially in the NCAA overall. So with that note, we will both say happy Thanksgiving to you if you celebrate Thanksgiving, because there's some people who do not, and hope that you have a safe and wonderful journey wherever you're going, and that you don't have to sit with your crazy uncle at the table while you're having a pleasant meal, because as you can see, Will has something for him. Or maybe that's just maybe that's for Mr. Bond.
Don't get too hammered on Thanksgiving, folks.
That's for Mr. Bond. Okay. Sounds good. And we will catch you next week. We'll get more into basketball as things go on there. We'll be talking to bracketologists and a lot more. That's all coming up on ACC Nation. Hope that you have a great holiday. Be careful. Until next time, cheers.
Cool.